this one. All right, we're in.
Woo!
So, hello, hello. This is Bearded Joe and Basic Jason. We're coming in to start off the new year with the Valhalla Bound podcast. This is something that has been in the works for a while, and so I wanted to kind of go over things, tell you guys about what we do, and welcome you into our podcast. So, basically, this is Valhalla Exotics. I know the podcast is going to be called Valhalla Bound because I want all of you to be Valhalla Bound. I want you guys to be coming out to the shows, coming to see us. I want you to think of us as a resource that as you're going through and involved in the reptile journey as we are, because that's really what this is. This isn't a business of pleasure so much as it is a lifestyle and a journey along the way. I've been working and taking care of reptiles for almost 22 years now. And I started the Valhalla Exotics business about probably 5 years ago. And I've really enjoyed actually doing this more so as a business and being able to make it more of a professional thing rather than just something that I do out of my office room at my house. So here at Valhalla Exotics, we do a couple of different things. We provide products to stores for cage conversions so that you can help make your own cages. We provide feeder sources to different pet stores, everywhere from Spring Hill all the way down to the St. Pete area. And we like to educate people as well. A lot of the things that I do at the trade shows and things is that I talk to people and I educate them on what they can do for their animals, how to care for them, and what they need to know in order to successfully keep these animals in captivity. We do have several shows coming up over the next month in January. We have the Sarasota show on January 6th. It's just a 1 day Reptiday show. And then we have the 2 day shows for Repticon in Lakeland on the 13th and 14th. We have the Orlando show on the 20th and 21st. And then we have the Tampa show all the way out in February. And that's going to be February 24th and 25th. So I wanted to kind of go over and I kind of give you a little bit of intro on the business here. And I wanted to talk about like my journey in reptiles as well as Jason's. So, Jason, if you want to start off, how long have you been keeping reptiles so far?
Oh man, I'm almost embarrassed to say now that you started with 22 years, but I've been doing it for about 2 years now. I got into it a little bit later in life. Um, Mostly started because my wife actually wanted to get a lizard. I was
Okay.
big in it. She wanted a bearded dragon. She was looking around, and we ended up settling on a Euromastix.
Good choice. A lot of people start with the bearded dragon. I'm a little bit preferential to Euros over beardies.
I mean, it really is a cool pet. It was a little different than I expected. Yeah, a lot, very hot. You have to keep those things so
Yes.
hot. And so moving on to some snakes that don't need it to be 135 degrees was just a blessing.
Yeah. How's
Um,
that care difference between taking care of a lizard versus taking care of a snake? What's the effort level there?
I'll tell you the biggest thing is food. Most lizards have to eat all the time, every day, every other day. You got to get crickets or supplemental with vegetables or fruit. I
Yeah.
mean, compared to the snakes that we've got, once every 2 weeks, once a week, once a month on some of them.
Hmm.
So that really is a blessing because think about the poop half as much. It's a much easier sell, I think, for a lot of people.
That's one of the things that I try to tell people all the time. I get parents that come up to me at the shows and they're like, "So, I want to get my son wants a reptile, and I really don't like snakes, but I was wondering what's a good starter reptile." And I was like, "A snake.
A snake.
Literally, any snake is going to be far easier than pick a reptile because let's be honest, I struggle to feed myself every day, and I for sure am not chopping up vegetables to feed to myself every day. So
Oh,
anything
that
that's going to
Euro
be
eats infinitely better than I do.
Oh, for sure. My roaches that I keep and breed for the pet stores, they're discoids. They're bougie and they want to eat fresh vegetables and citrus rinds and like they won't touch dog food or any of that other stuff. And I'm like, they eat better than I do. I don't I don't know why I can't take care of myself better, but I take care of all these animals and I'm not into anything that's going to have to be fed every single day.
And you talk about the Euros too. If you really want to take good care of them, they're eating arugula, endive, escargot. They're eating like top shelf
Yep.
lettuce. You can't feed them romaine or anything.
Nope.
So you can't feed them a spring mix bag. Well, you shouldn't. So from my limited knowledge of them, because my wife takes care of them, I see this huge salad bowl in my fridge that's been there for years that we have to constantly make and give it to every single day.
Yeah, it's too much for me. That's why I prefer the snakes every week as babies, unless you're dealing with the false water cobras. Those are a little bit different of an animal.
That's what I've
But
heard.
every week, and then as they get older, every 2 to 3 weeks is far more manageable, especially when you get moved into a larger collection. If you have one animal, it's a little easier to focus in and just make sure I feed them every day and I do this and kind of get into a routine. But when you start adding multiple species and multiple different animals, which everybody in the reptile community does, none of us keep one. There are 9.3 million people in Florida and that was on research probably 10 years ago, that keep at least one exotic reptile. And most of us don't just keep one. It's
No,
a 1, 2, then 22
I
issue.
don't know if I could trust someone that only had one.
Yeah, if they stop at one, automatically I'm suspicious of you.
I'm like, what's happened to you? Uh, that's an interesting take on it. So that it kind of changes the way you approach someone who wants to get a reptile. Like, do you want just one, or
Right,
do you plan on getting a bunch? Because if you want just one, you can get some really cool stuff.
right.
You could spend the money and get a really awesome snake, a really awesome lizard. If you only intend on having one, you could build a huge enclosure. You
Mhm.
could do all this stuff. Things change when you say, maybe 20.
Yeah, when you got one, and then you've got two, and then you go to 22, which is the joke that I always make with my customers. Is like once you get that second one, 22 is right around the corner. When you start getting into that, then you start really focusing more so on ease of care, and the approach is a lot different, right? When you have two animals that you can just like spoil, you've got massive cages and all live plants or whatever setups you want to do, whether you do bioactive or otherwise. I'm old school. I keep a lot of things very sterile, but I also am focused on breeding and reproduction and conservation of the species. So, with that in mind, a lot of my setups are far more simple than what somebody would do if this was more so a pet, right? You see my one of my falcons
I was about
in
to
the
comment. I didn't
background.
want to interrupt you, but
No,
what's behind you moving around?
so I've got the stack here is all false water cobras. I've got two males up there and three females, so there's a five stack, and then I do have in this cage here a monocle cobra.
They're just
These all
cruising
look,
around. I've been watching like the last few minutes. That one on the second enclosure has been just like circling around.
yeah, she's hungry. In fact, falsies are always hungry. I don't think I've ever met a falsie that wasn't starving. They eat every 2 to 3 days, so every day they're out cruising and hunting, burning calories.
Are a lot of colubrids tend to be like that,
They
from
do
what
eat
I
a lot of food.
understand.
They grow more rapidly than most other, whether it's the vipers or the pythons or boas. They grow more rapidly, and so early in their life, they're going to eat far more often. But then, in addition to that, they get quite large and they're very active throughout the day. So rather than a species that is going to be sitting in one spot doing the ambush, wait and pray kind of hunting tactic, these guys are actually out looking for food. And so with that comes an extra burn of calories, which means an increased feeding response and a more active digestive system. They're actually
And
going to eliminate faster and then keep moving rather than eating something really large and then sitting in one spot and waiting for it to digest.
so you compare that to my emerald that will go weeks without moving.
Hmm. Sit in
I
one
mean,
spot, just wait.
yeah, and so the conservation of energy is entirely different.
Yeah. So you have to approach the care on that a little bit differently. But that's one of the reasons I like keeping them is they're always out and active. Like I can go through and do a check on my emeralds and my green trees and just be like, boop, 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 boop. Everybody's in the same spot as the last 2 weeks. Perfect. Everybody's doing fine. These guys are always cruising and moving around. Like they're more interactive, so I get to see them more often. One of the reasons that they're one of my preferred species.
Really, yeah. See, for me personally, I mostly just had the Amazon tree boas. Those are my passion. That's what I love. So I'm trying to get that breeding project going.
Nice. That was going to be
Um,
one of my questions. Was what species are you wanting to produce this year? Hopefully.
I'm looking at. I have about three female Amazon tree boas. I'm looking at to breed this year. So I'm gonna be working with a few projects: calico, tiger. Those are the main ones that I'm looking for this my first year going into it. But they're definitely my favorite species. They're what I've invested the most time, effort, and energy into. Um, and that's probably what I'm going to stick with for a while.
Okay.
I
That's
mean, there's always kind of those wish list snakes.
Right, of course.
If one comes, if a Boland python comes around or
Okay.
something like that, you can't say no to.
Yeah.
And actually, that's something I was thinking about while you were talking though. Like, you've been in this industry for so long. Are there still anything out there that piques your interest? You see on Morph Market and you're like, buy, like they get
Oh,
you going.
I don't know about Morph Market holding something that I would like
Okay.
jump on at this point in the game. My my tastes and desires, like when I was 5 years old, I told my parents, like, one day I'm gonna have crocodiles, and I'm gonna have alligators, and I'm gonna have caimans and rattlesnakes and cobras, and I'm gonna do all of these things. And they rolled their eyes, like, okay, sure, sure you are. And now here I am, 32 years old. I've got cobras, I have rattlesnakes, baboon vipers, I have emerald tree boas and green tree pythons that I've been able to successfully breed, and it has grown a lot, and life has taken a journey of ups and downs along the way where I was into reptiles and then I got out and then I got back in. My wife actually convinced me to get back into it, but here I am living my dream. And so it's exciting, but there's always those things that are like, if this were to pop up, and it would probably be on fauna classifieds or on one of the smaller like venomous Facebook groups or something where people are like, hey, got these available, and it would probably be a king cobra. It's the only one that's on my like 5-year-old wish list that I don't have at this time.
Is
But
it
there
the like
are,
final thing for your parents to like give up all hope?
I mean,
Once you get
probably,
that, it's
probably,
sealed.
it's like he's done. There's no hope for him.
His 5-year-old prediction has come true.
Yep. It'll be the last bucket list, and then I'll just, Steve Irwin my way off this rock at some point. Rest in peace, Khaki Jesus.
So
He
the
was my
King Cobra.
hero.
How often do King Cobras come up for sale?
Oh, I've seen. Last year I saw them come available twice. Um, one of them I didn't get a response back from the person. The other one I did get responses back, and I was looking at getting a young male because several of my friends have female adults that would be able to breed to later on in the future. But some things happened, and business expenses and life takes its toll, and so I wasn't able to acquire that this year, but I'm hoping that next year will be the year where I finally get one of those. Obviously
Now,
there's other things that I'm like excited about, like Komodo Island vipers and getting
mm,
some more bush vipers, collecting more emeralds. I've had really good success over the last 2 years with those species, and so getting more of them, maybe even venturing further into basins. I do have a male that I'd love to get a girlfriend for at some point here and see if we can produce those as well.
man, so I can imagine if they don't come up very often, the what's the price range looking like? Is it all over the place?
It actually might surprise you. If they are fresh babies
Yeah.
and they're captive bred, you would think, oh, you're gonna have them forever. They're gonna be way up there in price. But I was looking at spending $2,500 for one that is already established, already eating rodents as well as snakes and things like that, which seems like a lot of money, right? But when you look at a basin, may
Yeah, that's what
cost
I was
you
thinking.
ten to $15,000. Or you look at a Boland's, which could go up to $2,000, $3,000. Some of the emeralds and Amazon species are $1,500 to $2,000. Like in comparison, it's really not that much.
Yeah, no, that's a steal, I might say. I mean, but they get huge though. I
Yeah,
mean, what kind
I
of
mean,
enclosures are you looking at for something like that?
I'd have to empty out this room and just make it one cage, probably.
Oh man, that was the scariest room in your house.
Right, right. The If you read anywhere online, it says that they can get upwards of 18 feet. I've never personally seen one at that size. I've seen videos of ones that look like they could possibly be close to that range. The biggest ones I've ever worked with are probably 12 to 13 feet long, which is still a massive venomous snake.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a oh,
they're not built like retics or boas. They're built more like a colubrid, where they've got kind of a uniform body size all the way down from head to tail, and they're just very thick bodied. I mean, bigger around than my forearm and very strong. So it's almost difficult to even work with them with hooks at that size. It's more so a two-person job to move them around safely.
I think you and I went and saw one that was fairly large.
Yeah,
One of your
my friend
acquaintances
John
had.
Anderson's.
Oh, Johnny, that was a pretty big snake.
Yeah, she's 13 feet. That's one of the females I was mentioning.
Yeah, that was even daunting just looking at it. Like, how do you even do anything? Like, what do you have to take it to the vet? What if you have to, I mean, any problems with that thing?
It would more so probably be contacting one of my friends who is a veterinarian and having them come over and observe and look at it, kind of doing a house call and just paying the extra money for that.
I mean, does everyone just meditate first and pray, call their mom? Like, I could imagine doing any type of veterinary work or even just daily maintenance. Like, what if you have to get in there and get, what if it regurgitates? You got to get in there and get it out.
Long tongues are your friend.
Well, can you be outside the room though? Like, how long do they make these tongs?
The nice thing about cobras is that however tall they can stand up is kind of their range. They will run at you if they're a species that you haven't worked with a lot. A lot of like captive bred monocles aren't necessarily going to chase you down. King cobras are very intelligent, and they will stand up and at 12 feet, a third of their body length up. That's a 4 foot range. So they've got some distance, but if your hook is 48 inches, you've got an extra 8 inches of space, and they're going to kind of strike downwards. So it gives you a little bit of leeway to kind of stay out of their way. But if you got to get something out of the cage using a pair of tongs or hooks that you just open up the cage a little bit, reach in there, grab it, kind of do the quick slide and close shut. Or the safest method of removing anything is just to get the animal out, get it into a separate enclosure, and then do your cage maintenance. That's pretty much the policy that I follow with cleaning or taking care of any venomous animals. Is you don't do cage
That's the
maintenance.
protocol.
Yeah, it's you don't do cage maintenance with the animal inside the enclosure because accidents happen. No matter how
At some
calm the
point,
animal is, no matter how captive bred or long you've had it, at some point they're going to have a bad hair day, and you're going to reach in there to change a water dish, and they're going to go no, and that's an expensive hospital visit.
oof. I mean, you'd think at some point we're gonna have to have robots do this. You just have a little robot with little, like the bomb disposal robots that come in and take care of your
or
venomous.
or like one of those automatic cat like
Yeah.
the
Yes.
the litter box cleaner where it just kind of like rakes across it, filters out through the bedding, pulls the poop away.
Man, because like if you could limit your interaction, but then also what's the point of having one if you're not interacting with it a little bit?
And that's an important topic that you bring up, right? I do work with venomous, and I have a because in Florida you have to have a license in order to keep or work with these animals, even just to move a rattlesnake from one like oh it's in my yard and I want to move it to preserve somewhere. If you get caught with that rattlesnake in your car, it's a felony. So you have to be licensed in order to even move a native species. So I get a lot of people that contact me and are like, "Hey, I know you work with venomous. I have to have a mentor and I have to get my hours. It's 1,000 hours of training that you have to document with a licensed individual already, and you have to submit that and do your inspections through Florida Fish and Wildlife. It's a whole process, and so people want to get their hours with me. And I do have a couple of apprentices, but I weed out a lot of people who contact me, and it's not because of them or who they are, or I just don't like them. It's more so the reasoning behind why they're asking, right? I start asking questions and I look into, like, why do you want to keep a venomous snake, right? Because for me, it wasn't a choice. I knew from the time I was little that this was something I was going to do. And when I started wanting to do it, it was like, it'd be so cool to have a rattlesnake, right? And now it has evolved into, I knew that I had to do it because it was a passion of mine, and I knew that I would do it safely, but it's also a conservation thing. I don't just keep rattlesnakes for bragging rights. I keep species that are local to the Hernando County area, and I work with the Venom 3 response unit through the fire department here, where I go and relocate animals from unsafe areas for them. Not necessarily unsafe for humans because the animals were here first. We are expanding and growing, and we're invading their territory, right? So, with that, you can't move a venomous snake more than a mile or two outside of their native habitat because statistically they're going to get picked off by a predator. They're not going to find food. They'll be stressed out. They won't be able to find somewhere warm to hide and live, and they'll die. So, rather than moving them to another preserve 50, 60 miles away, because that's what I'd have to do in the Spring Hill area, I'd have to go pretty far to get to a safe area to release them. And we're outside of that window, they're going to die anyway. I move a lot of those species that are native into my care for a short time. make sure a vet takes a look at them, make sure that they're clean and free of parasites, make sure they're eating, and then we'll relocate them to a milking facility or a pharmaceutical lab where they'll actually be involved in medical research and things like that, and they can live out the rest of their lives without having to like just be eaten or moved just because we're in the way.
Do you get a lot of calls in the Hernando County area?
Not recently because it's winter, so not a lot of things moving around,
Mhm.
but we get quite a bit of calls, especially during summertime. Kids are off of school and out going and doing things. People are at the parks. So I get more calls during those times. And a lot of it is, oh, there's a snake and I don't know what it is. It's a corn snake, a black rat snake, black racer, or and then occasionally we get moccasins and rattlesnakes. Being where me and you live, it's a little more rural, and we do still have a higher population of rattlesnakes, being our easterns and pygmies, and then the water moccasins. Not as many of the copperheads, but it's occasional that we find something.
Yeah, because I've lived here my entire life. I've never seen a rattlesnake in the
And
wild.
they don't want to be seen.
And I was in the woods all the time. I go hiking and never seen. My wife has seen them. I've never seen one.
Yeah. They don't wanna be seen. It's not something that they're just out, like, and brave and trying to be like, "Oh, I'm bad, so nobody's gonna mess with me." Most of the time when I get these calls, my first question is, "Do you have eyes on the animal?" Because people will call and be like, "Oh, I saw a rattlesnake in my yard when I was doing my gardening." And then they go inside and pull the kids and the dogs inside and things like that, and then they call me. And I go, "Do you have eyes on it?" They go, "Well, no." And I go, "That animal's gone." The moment that they know they've been spotted, these things take off. They don't want to be seen by us. They don't want to bother us, and they live here, so they're a natural part of our ecosystem, and they deserve to be here. But if it's a venomous snake, I still go out and look for it because I don't want anybody to get hurt. But I also get a lot of those native species calls where it's like, listen, corn snakes are good to have around. Rat snakes are good to have nearby. The black racer's not going to hurt anybody, and he lives here. He's going to keep the pest population down. So it's an important part that educating the population about what's here and what's native.
Yeah, because if someone calls and says they have 5 acres and you come out there and they're like, "There's a snake out there," you're like, "Yeah, probably."
Most likely,
Yeah,
there's more
yeah,
than one.
I would assume. What are you gonna trump around till you find one?
Yeah, that's
Just
sometimes I end up on those calls, and I've got a scared little old lady who just is nervous about the snake tail she saw, out in her garden area or on the driveway when she was pulling in, and I'll walk around and look, but if she describes it as anything non-venomous, then I will just educate that these are good things to have around.
do you bring like a decoy snake to be like, "I caught it," and then you put him in the bucket
That might be a good idea on those calls where I really just want to go back home.
and be like, "Don't worry, got them all.
Yeah, I got it.
You
Try out.
you'll never see another snake in your yard again." I told the other ones as they were running away not
Yep,
to come back.
I let them know. Private property. No, do not trespass.
Put up some signs,
No snake crossing.
no snake crossing, because that's the only thing I get are those black racers.
Yeah.
I've got one that lives in my yard that's like missing an eye.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's got like this huge scar over it. And it's the scariest snake I've ever seen. Like
I
of the
feel
king
like
cobras,
you're
of
right.
all the things I've seen, this black racer with one eye is just terrifying.
I will say, of all the species that I have caught in the wild, right? I've caught pygmies and easterns, and I've seen animals with some minor damage or missing rattles off their tail or something. Black racers, anytime that I've seen an animal with an injury that like is still thriving and doing its thing, black racers are badass little dudes. They will take a beating. I've seen them with missing like most of their tail. I've seen scars all over their body. Like they will fight anybody and come out just still doing their thing. They don't care. Nothing stops them.
I feel like they're mostly fighting birds and like weed whackers.
Yeah,
Like I
most
think those are
likely.
their native most
They're native
dangerous things out
predators.
there for. Yeah, their predators are weed whackers, lawnmowers, and birds, and I think they win a lot of those fights.
Yeah, they still get chopped, pieces chopped up off of them, and then they'll heal up. They're very resilient, and they'll go right back to it,
Now,
right back to doing what they're supposed to do.
they're fairly cantankerous. Does anyone actually work with them in captivity? Do people breed them?
Oh goodness, I think I've seen captive born. So like somebody happened on some eggs, hatched them out, and had some captive born rather than captive bred racers. I've kept them in the past. I've only ever been able to get them to eat like lizards and things like that, and even that was kind of rare. They're not one that like comes into captivity and tolerates it very well. Like if I get a baby eastern or baby pygmy rattlesnake, I got one probably 2 or 3 days ago, and got him from the wild. He doesn't like people, doesn't like anything. I put him in a cage and I offered him a pinky mouse, and he ate it the next day, or pinky rat, and he bit it, killed it, put it away. Because for whatever reason, baby rattlesnakes are like, hold on, you're telling me there's no predators in here. You're telling me that the temperatures are nice. It's not cold anymore. I'm hanging out, and you're telling me that I get free food. Sign me up. I'm happy. I'm not even gonna be. I'm not even mad and rattling at you anymore. I'm good. This is cool. They take to it so much better than other species that I've tried to pull in from the wild. Obviously, it's like a kid, scarlet king snakes or black racers or corn snakes. They'll be a little more resistant. Even the ringneck snakes, I've never been able to keep a ringneck snake alive in captivity, and I've been doing
I've
this a
never heard of
long
anyone
time.
who has.
I've seen people say that they can. I don't think I've ever seen somebody say that they got them to eat mice because they don't get very large. So most of the time, it's they're able to get them to eat like earthworms or red wigglers or something like that.
Yeah, I was wondering about the black racers because I'm like they're so active,
Hmm.
they're so cool, but everyone that I've encountered in the wild has been very upset with me.
Yes, I've never grabbed one and not been bitten.
Yeah, that 100% of the time.
But what's even worse is the musk. Most of the time when I try to catch black racers, and I will actually just go ahead and grab them ass end first. And I've had people like I'm grabbing them by their tail and they're biting me, and people are like, "You got the wrong end there, kid." And I go, "No, actually, I would prefer to be bitten over having them musk on me because it's gonna smell for days. Like you just can't, no matter how many times you wash your hands, it's still there."
It's so bad. And Amazons are pretty rough too.
Yeah, they have a good musk on them. So not all
Yeah.
snakes have that, which is interesting and unique. That like rattlesnake musk kind of smells like vanilla.
Okay.
It just depends on the species. Like some of them, it's not that bad, but it is like a scent that's just supposed to be a deterrent for predators.
Interesting. Is what about colubrids?
So I'm not a big fan of when the falsies. I only have one, the one that was super active earlier in the video here. She's the only one that I got at a point in time in my life when I was in my nurse practitioner program, and I didn't handle her and work with her nearly as much as I did like Jormungandr, my other one. And so she does not like to come out. I've pulled her out of her cage and she flails and she whips her tail and she hoods up and does everything that a wild one would do. She's not as bitey as she used to be, but she will musk on occasion, and it's not that great. I wouldn't say it's quite as bad as like a black racer or like even the Amazons, but there's also a much larger quantity because it's a bigger snake.
Oh, the lingering is the problem. You can't just wash your hands and go about your day.
No, it's like always kind of in the back of your mind every time you like rub your face with it. You're like, oh yeah, forgot about that. It's still there. It's not
I
as
know.
bad
I'm
as like
like,
a skunk, but it's there.
I know. You start Googling remedies. You're like, maybe washing my hands with gasoline. You're like looking
Tomato
around.
something. Got to get something out of it.
Yeah, the Amazons get me. It's the worst.
I think that's going to draw us to a close
Yeah.
for this initial podcast, our first one. We would like to thank everybody who is joining in and listening. If you guys have topics or conversations that you want to hear from us and things you'd like to learn about, please feel free to just comment down below, and make sure you hit like and subscribe so that we can get more of a following and get the algorithm to push out our information as we continue to elaborate on more species and go over the different things we're learning and what's happening in the reptile community. I know that I have a couple of social media things that I do on the other end of things, like pictures and videos and fun stuff for people to follow along as I go through my daily journey of taking care of the animals that I work with. So I have Valhalla Exotics on Facebook. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and other things. We'll be posting videos on YouTube here. Jason, you have social media things as well?
Yeah, Kingside Exotics, but a lot of the stuff we collaborate on, we'll post them to both pages. But Kingside Exotics on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. We also have some merchandise that we make available for Valhalla Exotics. It's on our website, valhallaexotics.com. So if you ever want to represent the team and join in with the Valhalla crew, go ahead and log onto the website. You can order things right from there. We got hoodies, we got like phone cases, shirts, the whole shebang on there, hats and everything, like what I've got here. So feel free to get on, find those. If you come to one of our shows and you're wearing Valhalla merch, you'll get a percentage off of your order. So don't ever forget that. There's always deals out there. It's been a pleasure, guys. We appreciate you guys for supporting our podcast along the way, and we look forward to the next episode.